All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're talking about the families who, well, let's just say they're the real power players in Pakistan. They're the ones who built its industries, shaped its finances, and are quietly steering its future. So, who really runs Pakistan? It's a huge country, right? Over 240 million people. We see the politicians on the news, but behind all that, there's a whole other layer of influence and just immense wealth. And it might not be who you think. Get this. There are single families out there whose private wealth is bigger than the entire yearly budgets of three of Pakistan's provinces combined. Just let that sink in. That's the kind of scale we're dealing with here. Now, before we jump in, we need to be really clear about something. For this explainer, we're focusing on the big industrial empires. The ones with assets and revenues you can actually trace. We're not getting into the wealth of political dynasties. That's a whole different beast, full of shadows and complicated dealings. Today, it's all about the titans of business. Okay, let's kick things off with our first group, the foundation builders. These are the families who basically laid the groundwork for huge parts of Pakistan's modern economy. First up, the Haroons. Now, their power doesn't really come from factories or banks. It comes from something way more subtle, and you could argue way more powerful: the media. The heart of their empire is the Dawn Media Group. It's pretty much Pakistan's paper of record. And their reach? It's insane. They're in front of over 8 million Pakistanis every single day. That is some serious soft power. The power to shape what people talk about, what they think is important. And yeah, they've also got ventures in sugar and real estate to make sure those printing presses keep on running. Next up, if the Karachi Stock Exchange had a family name, it might just be Siddiqui. These guys didn't just play in Pakistan's financial markets. They practically built huge chunks of it from the ground up. And their story is just incredible. They started in 1971 as a tiny one-room brokerage. And today, their flagship, JS Bank, is an absolute behemoth. But here's their real genius. They're brilliant at spotting a gap in the market before anyone else. Microinsurance for rickshaw drivers? They did it. Digital wallets for migrant workers? Yep. They even quietly bought into pretty much every ride-hailing app in the country. They just see where things are going. All right, let's move on to a family that has absolutely mastered the art of mixing business with politics, the Saifullahs. This is where industry and government become almost one and the same. I mean, their portfolio is huge: textiles, cement, and they generate a whopping 1,200 megawatts of private power. They even helped kickstart the cell phone revolution with Mobilink. But here's the kicker. The family is always in politics, holding seats in the Senate, getting key government jobs. Think about it. When you own the power plants and you sit on the committees that decide the energy prices, well, that's a pretty powerful feedback loop, isn't it? Okay, on to our next group, who I'm calling the resilient giants. We're talking about old money families who've seen it all, survived incredible challenges, and have legacies that go back a century or more. You literally cannot tell the story of Pakistan's economy without mentioning the Habibs. Seriously. Their story starts way back in the 1920s, financing trade caravans. They founded Habib Bank, which became the bank for the new nation. They even gave the government its first ever loan. But then, disaster struck. In the 1970s, the government nationalized their bank, just took it away. For almost anyone else, that would have been the end of the story. Game over. But not for the Habibs. This quote says it all. They just clawed their way back. They started a whole new bank, Bank Al-Habib, which is now another giant in the industry. I mean, talk about resilience. And speaking of resilience, let's look at another amazing story. The Saigol family's journey from a tiny shoe shop in the 1890s to a massive modern empire. It's a total masterclass in how to survive. So their story is just wild. They built one of the biggest textile mills in all of Asia, only to get slammed by that same wave of nationalization that hit the Habibs. It nearly wiped them out. But here's where they played it so smart. When the government started selling those businesses back, the Saigols strategically bought up their old units, often for pennies on the dollar, and rebuilt a brand new, diversified empire that's stronger than ever today. Okay, now we're really raising the stakes. We're moving into the big leagues now, the realm of the billionaires. These are the global titans whose names carry weight far, far beyond Pakistan's borders. First up, Sadruddin Hashwani, with a fortune estimated at around $4.1 billion. He made his first fortune in cotton, but today his empire is all about luxury hotels. And his real asset? It's access. Pretty much any world leader who visits Pakistan is staying in one of his hotels. Next, let's talk about Sir Anwar Pervez with an estimated net worth of 4.6 billion. His story is the real deal, a true rags to riches tale. He went from being a bus driver in London to building the UK's second largest wholesale company, Bestway. And here's the thing that's so great about Sir Anwar. Despite being a literal billionaire, people say he still flies economy class. It's just this amazing little detail that shows you he's never forgotten where he came from. And finally, the man they often call Pakistan's Rockefeller, Mian Mansha, with a net worth of around $5 billion. His company, the Nishat Group, is a monster in textiles, cement, power, banking, and he's known for being totally hands-on with all of it. But even after all that, there's still one person who stands completely alone at the very top. And his story is different. It's not a Pakistani story, really. It's the American dream, but on an absolutely global scale. Just take a look at this chart. It tells you everything you need to know. You've got Mian Mansha at $5 billion, Sir Anwar at $4.6 billion, and then there's Shahid Khan, with a net worth estimated as high as $13.3 billion. I mean, the gap is it's massive. His journey is pure legend. He came to the US from Pakistan with just $500 in his pocket, washed dishes to pay for his engineering degree. Then he designed a game-changing one-piece truck bumper. He started his own company, and get this, eventually bought out the company he used to work for. He built a global auto parts empire, and from there, conquered the world of sports, buying an NFL team, a Premier League soccer club, and a major wrestling promotion. It's just, wow. So there you have it. From newspapers to power plants to football stadiums, these families have basically woven the economic fabric of a nation. Their influence is everywhere, touching almost every part of Pakistani life. But the story is definitely not over. The next generation of these dynasties, they are not sitting still. They're already making big moves into the next frontiers of wealth, things like fintech, crypto, and the global hunt for critical resources like lithium. They're adapting, making sure their families stay on top for another 100 years. Which, of course, leaves us with one last really big question. The story of these families is completely intertwined with the story of Pakistan itself. So as they keep evolving, how will these incredibly powerful dynasties end up shaping the next century for the country? It's definitely something to think about.